The MGTOW movement has largely emerged as a response to the fractured relationship between the sexes in the Western world. In the last 40 years, feminism has successfully undermined the very institutions that society thrives on, such as the family, the important role played by men, and the dynamics between the genders. From feminist whining at video game stereotypes and perceived sexism in media to affirmative action programs, they have tried to make out that men and women are essentially interchangeable and that gender is a construct. The overly feminized corporate world, misandry in the media, political correctness, gender politics, and outright emasculation of men and boys in education has created a generation of men who have chosen to opt out of society. This demographic ranges in age between 15 to 35 and is growing steadily. Men are not even permitted to express their dejection at how unfair the system has become and are simply told to man up and deal with it. Marriage is no longer a healthy and positive institution within society. It's become an all too risky endeavour for men, with divorce and child custody laws favouring women in every respect. Promiscuity has been encouraged by feminism as a result of marriage no longer being relevant. Consequently, women's desires to settle down and have children at the more practical and natural age of their early and late 20s is being suppressed instead by individualistic needs. Their biological inclinations are being neglected and postponed into their 30s and 40s, and in some cases, many women who would otherwise have bred instead will remain childless. Instead, they are told to ignore their natural impulses in favour of artificial self-obsession generated by the media and corporations. Look around you. Our culture is valuing individualism more than family and community. From the self-help industry to people's corporate careers, everything has become centered around people trying to better themselves as opposed to trying to better society. If we teach a generation of women to treat men with suspicion and fear and value materialism such as fashion, wealth, body image, beauty magazines, and consumerism, men are going to be less likely to settle down with these women. Bars and nightclubs are one of the worst ways of pair bonding because of how cruelly men can be treated in these environments. They're provocative, impersonal, and guys are largely looked upon as potential rapists and creeps for merely expressing any level of romantic interest in a woman. Yet, oddly, these venues are among the primary ways by which young people in their 20s are expected to pair bond in the Western world. Expectations of men are unrealistically high, and their financial status is valued more than anything else. So some men are forced to go MGTOW and retreat into pornography, video games, becoming a player or a PUA. All this to protect themselves from a system that is seriously weighted against them. In Japan, the rise of the herbivore man who simply doesn't engage with women socially whatsoever is a startling example of this and was a kind of early canary in the coal mine for today's Western MGTOW male. It turns out, though, men going their own way when faced with a society that undervalues and derides them is actually a natural and predictable reaction. It is also a very serious and potentially catastrophic precursor to the end of civilization itself. Allow me to explain. John B. Calhoun was an American ethologist and behavioral researcher noted for his studies in population density and its effects on behavior. He believed that human overpopulation would create for a grim future and based his research on a study he conducted on rodents in the 1960s. The mouse utopia experiment brilliantly depicts not only the detrimental impact of overpopulation, but also what happens to a society that decides to become obsessed with empowering one gender over the other and undermining its male population. In July 1968, the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment in Poolesville, Maryland. Headed by Calhoun, of course, 4 pairs of mice were introduced into a perfect mouse environment, a kind of utopian universe. It was a 9-foot, 2.7 meter square metal pen with 54-inch high, 1.4 meter sides. Each of the sides contained 4 groups of 4 vertical wire mesh tunnels. These tunnels gave the mice access to nesting boxes as well as food hoppers and water dispensers. In this micro world, there was ample food and water as well as nesting material. There were no predators for the mice to deal with. There was just one major problem, and that was the limited amount of space. The population doubled every 55 days, reaching 620 by day 315. Then the rate of population growth dropped massively. The last surviving birth was on day 600. The following is an excerpt of the study from Wikipedia. This period between day 315 and day 600 saw a breakdown in social structure and in normal social behavior. Among the aberrations in behavior were the following: expulsion of young before weaning was complete, wounding of young, inability of dominant males to maintain the defense of their territory and females, aggressive behavior of females, passivity of non-dominant males with increased attacks on each other which were not defended against. After day 600, the social breakdown continued and the population declined toward extinction. During this period, females ceased to reproduce. Their male counterparts withdrew completely, never engaging in courtship or fighting. They ate, drank, slept, and groomed themselves, all solitary pursuits. Sleek, healthy coats and an absence of scars characterized these males. They were dubbed the beautiful ones. Breeding never resumed, and behavior patterns were permanently changed. To my lights, these males sound uncannily like the modern MGTOWs, or even more so, the herbivore men found in Japan. Is the presence of MGTOW a natural byproduct of social decay? Is it a natural defense mechanism for males who are poorly treated or no longer able to function in a world that has become too overcrowded and too socially corrupted to care for their needs? If MGTOWs are a human analog for the beautiful ones, then human civilization may be doomed. Perhaps modern extremist politics, which attempts to control large populations but only serves to accommodate irrational progressive liberal thinking, is an analog to the social disorder that Calhoun spoke about. He also referenced sexual deviation and the breakdown of conventional gender roles, as well as not just males but also females neglecting their offspring. This lack of parental supervision and proper rearing meant that the next generation failed to function correctly within society. From Calhoun's own notes, he says, many female mice were unable to carry pregnancy to full term or to survive delivery of their litters if they did. An even greater number, after successfully giving birth, fell short in their maternal functions. Amongst the males, the behavior disturbances range from sexual deviation to cannibalism and from frenetic overactivity to a pathological withdrawal from which individuals would emerge to eat, drink, and move about only when other members of the community were asleep. The social organization of the animals showed equal disruption. The mice became more promiscuous. Mice would roam around attacking others or mounting them, irrespective of gender. So what was concluded by Calhoun's mouse utopia experiment? When all available space is taken up and all social roles are filled, competition and stress experienced by individuals in society will result in the deterioration in complex social behaviors and the eventual extinction of the species. Human beings are animals just like mice. We may be much more evolved and intelligent, but our natural biological needs remain the same. We are a social species that needs guidance, male and female parents, a stable environment, and something to strive for. Overpopulation seems to result in increased aggressive behavior, dependence on an unsustainable system, depression perhaps as a result of a seemingly meaningless existence, introversion, erratic, hostile, and perverted thinking, and social breakdown. This experiment demonstrates many of the problems our society is facing today and may face in the future. Can we really ignore what's happening in our world? If men have started going their own way, then it could signify the end of humanity in just a few decades, or maybe we can turn the tide, assuming it's even possible. Every single time Calhoun ran this experiment, which he also did with rats, the result was the same. Are we humans really all that different? I guess one day we're going to find out.